Robert Chen had always believed that success meant being everywhere except home. For the past 15 years, his life had been an endless cycle of airports, hotel rooms, and conference halls. He'd built a software company from his garage into a tech empire worth $42 million. But somewhere along the way, his massive Connecticut estate had become just another property he owned rather than a place he actually lived. The house itself was something out of a magazine. 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, a pool that could host the Olympics, and gardens that stretched so far you'd need a golf cart to see them all. Robert had bought it 5 years ago, thinking he'd finally slow down and enjoy life. That hadn't happened. Instead, he'd spent maybe 30 days total in the place, always rushing off to the next big deal, the next investor meeting, the next conference that absolutely couldn't happen without him. That's where Maria came in. She'd been taking care of his home for 8 years now, first at his old place and then at this estate. She was from Ecuador, a single mom with 2 kids, and honestly, Robert trusted her more than he trusted most of his business partners. She had keys to everything, access to all his accounts for household expenses, and complete freedom to run things however she saw fit. In 8 years, she'd never given him a single reason to doubt her. The house was always perfect when he returned, bills paid on time, everything exactly where it should be. On that particular October morning, Robert was supposed to be in Singapore. He'd been planning this trip for months. 3 weeks of back-to-back meetings, a major tech conference, and negotiations with potential investors from across Asia. His calendar was packed solid until the end of the month. Maria knew his schedule. She always knew his schedule. He'd even sent her a reminder email before leaving, as he always did, but then the typhoon hit. Not directly, but close enough that the Singapore government had issued warnings, and the conference organizers had made the call to postpone everything. Robert got the notification at 3 a.m. local time, sitting in his hotel room, feeling that particular mix of relief and frustration that comes with sudden plan changes. He could have stayed. Maybe explored the city, taken some actual vacation time for once in his life. But Robert Chen didn't do vacations. He did work, and if he wasn't going to be working in Singapore, he might as well be working from home, or at least that's what he told himself as he booked the next flight back to New York. 23 hours later, accounting for the flight time and the time difference, Robert's black Mercedes was pulling through the iron gates of his estate. It was 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. The October sun was bright. The leaves were just starting to turn those brilliant shades of orange and red, and everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful, actually. That's when Robert noticed the first thing that seemed off. There were cars in his driveway. Not Maria's old Honda, he expected that, but 3 other vehicles he didn't recognize. A beat-up minivan, a small sedan that had seen better days, and an SUV with a dented bumper. They weren't parked in front of the house where visitors would normally park. They were off to the side, near the path that led to the pool area, like someone was trying to keep them out of sight. Robert felt his stomach tighten. His first thought was a break-in, but that didn't make sense. The cars were just sitting there in broad daylight. Then he heard it. Laughter. Children's laughter specifically. High-pitched squeals of delight mixed with the sound of splashing water. He turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Kids. Multiple kids. At his house. In his pool. On a Thursday afternoon when he was supposed to be 7,000 miles away, Robert grabbed his phone and pulled up the security camera app. He'd had a whole system installed when he bought the place, but honestly, he never checked it. What was the point? Maria was there and he trusted her. But now his finger hovered over the icon, then pulled back. No. He'd go look himself. He got out of the car quietly, leaving his luggage in the trunk. The sounds were getting louder as he approached the side of the house. More laughter, adult voices calling out instructions, splashing. It sounded like a party. It sounded like a lot of people. Robert's mind was racing through possibilities. Had Maria rented out his house without telling him? Was this some kind of elaborate robbery where they bring your family along? Had she been letting people use his pool this whole time? 8 years of trust, and maybe he'd been naive the entire time. He felt his jaw clench. He paid Maria very well, more than double what most housekeepers made, plus bonuses, plus he'd helped her with her kids' school expenses more than once. All he asked in return was that she take care of his home and respect his privacy. Was that too much to ask? The gate to the pool area was slightly open. Robert could see through the gap now. His pristine, usually empty pool was full of people. He pushed the gate open wider and stepped through. What he saw made him freeze completely. This wasn't a party. This wasn't anything like what he'd imagined. There were about 20 kids in and around his pool, ranging from what looked like 5 years old to maybe teenagers. But these weren't just kids splashing around. Every single one of them was wearing a life jacket. Professional-grade, bright orange life jackets, and that's when Robert noticed the wheelchairs. They were lined up neatly by the pool house. 5, 6, 7 of them, different sizes. Some were clearly expensive medical equipment. Next to them were crutches, walkers, and things Robert didn't even know the names for. In the water, he could see kids with visible disabilities. One boy was missing his left leg below the knee. A girl had what looked like a prosthetic arm set carefully on a towel nearby. Another child was being supported by an adult, learning to float, and Robert could see the special supports they were using. There were 4 adults in the water, each working carefully with small groups of kids. They weren't playing. They were teaching. Proper swimming instruction, patient and focused. His outdoor kitchen area had been transformed into an organized station with neatly arranged snacks and drinks. Water bottles were labeled with names. There were medical bags, first aid kits, towels folded and stacked with military precision. And there, at the far end of the pool, wearing a modest black swimsuit and an instructor's vest, was Maria. She was in the water up to her waist, demonstrating something to a small girl who looked nervous. Maria's voice was patient and encouraging, speaking in both English and Spanish, her hands gentle as she guided the child through the movement. Robert just stood there. The anger that had been building during his walk from the car was still there, but it was getting tangled up with confusion. This was organized. This was professional. This clearly wasn't the first time this had happened. How long had this been going on, and why? One of the other instructors saw him first. She stopped mid-sentence and her eyes went wide. She said something to Maria, and Robert watched as Maria's head turned toward him. For just a second, their eyes met across the pool area. The color drained from Maria's face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked terrified. Absolutely terrified. And in that moment, Robert realized that whatever was happening here, whatever explanation was about to come, his housekeeper had been keeping a very big secret. Maria moved through the water faster than Robert had ever seen her move. She said something quick to the instructor next to her, who immediately took over with the little girl. Then Maria was climbing out of the pool, grabbing a towel, her hands shaking so badly she could barely wrap it around herself. Robert just stood there, not sure what to do with his hands, not sure what to say. Part of him wanted to start yelling right then and there, demand to know what was going on. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way those kids were looking at him now, confused about who this stranger was. Maybe it was how carefully everything seemed to be organized. Or maybe it was just the look of pure panic on Maria's face. She reached him, water dripping from her hair onto the stone patio. "Mr. Chen," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can explain. Please, I can explain everything." "My office," Robert said quietly. "Now." Maria nodded, turning to one of the other instructors. "Katie, you're in charge. Continue with the lesson plan. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Her voice was steady when she said it, professional, like she'd done this 100 times, which Robert was starting to realize she probably had. They walked to his office in silence. Maria left wet footprints on his hardwood floors, still clutching the towel around her shoulders. Robert could hear her breathing, quick and shallow, like she was trying not to cry. He'd never seen her like this. In 8 years, Maria had always been composed, capable, the kind of person who handled problems before he even knew they existed. His office was exactly as he'd left it 3 weeks ago. Clean desk, expensive leather chairs, walls lined with awards and photos from various business achievements. Robert sat down behind his desk, then immediately felt wrong about it. Too formal, too much like a boss about to fire someone. But it was too late now. Maria was already sitting across from him, perched on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. "Talk," Robert said. Maria took a shaky breath. "I know I should have asked permission. I know what I did was wrong. I didn't know what else to do." "Start from the beginning," Robert said, trying to keep his voice level. "How long has this been happening?" 4 months, Maria admitted, looking down at her hands. Every Thursday afternoon when you're away. Just Thursdays. 2 hours from 2 to 4, 4 months, 16 weeks. 32 hours of people using his property without his knowledge. Robert felt his jaw tighten again, but he stayed quiet, letting her continue. It started because of my brother, Maria said. Carlos, he's 3 years younger than me. He was working construction and there was an accident. A scaffolding collapse. He fell 3 stories. She paused, her voice catching. That was 3 years ago. He's been in a wheelchair ever since, paralyzed from the waist down. Robert hadn't known that. He realized, sitting there, how little he actually knew about Maria's life beyond the fact that she had 2 kids and did excellent work. He'd never asked about her family. Never asked about much of anything, really. The doctor said swimming would help him, Maria continued. Aquatic therapy, they called it. Something about how the water supports your body, lets you move in ways you can't on land. They said it could help him build strength, improve his circulation, even help with the pain. But the therapy sessions cost $200 an hour, and our insurance wouldn't cover it because they said it was non-essential treatment. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Non-essential. Like my brother learning to live with his disability isn't essential. Robert stayed silent, watching her. Maria's hands were still trembling, and she kept twisting the edge of the towel between her fingers. I found a community center about 40 minutes from here, she said. They had a program for people with disabilities. Adaptive swimming, they called it. It was free, run by volunteers. Carlos started going twice a week, and Mr. Chen, it changed his life. Within 2 months, he was stronger, happier. He started smiling again, started talking about maybe going back to school, learning something new since he couldn't do construction anymore. Maria looked up at Robert now, her eyes red but determined. I started volunteering there too. On my days off, I learned how to help, how to support someone in the water, the safety protocols, all of it. There were about 15 families using that center. Not just people with spinal injuries, but kids with cerebral palsy, autism, amputees, developmental disabilities, all people who couldn't afford private therapy. What happened to the program? Robert asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. Budget cuts, Maria said bitterly. The community center lost its funding in May. They had to shut down the pool program completely. Just like that. All those families gone, nowhere else to go. The waiting lists at other facilities were 2 years long. 2 years. And that's if they could afford it, which most of them couldn't. She took another breath, steadying herself. I saw what it did to Carlos. In just 2 weeks without the water therapy, he started getting depressed again. The pain was coming back worse, and I kept thinking about those kids. One little boy, he was 7 years old, born without his left arm. His mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Swimming was the only place where he said he felt normal, where the other kids didn't stare at him or treat him different. Robert could see where this was going now, but he let her finish. I knew you were going to be in Japan for 3 weeks, Maria said. And I thought maybe just once. Just one Thursday, I could bring Carlos and a few others here. Use the pool for 2 hours, clean everything up. You'd never know. It would be like it never happened. But it wasn't just once, Robert said. No, Maria admitted. Because when I saw those kids in the water, when I saw how happy they were, how much it helped them, I couldn't stop. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying your trust. But every week I saw the difference it made, and I couldn't bring myself to tell those families we had to stop. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, smoothing it out on Robert's desk. It was a detailed schedule, printed neatly. Names, times, emergency contacts, medical information for each participant. I kept records of everything, Maria said. Every person who comes here has to sign a liability waiver. I took out an additional insurance policy with my own money, just in case something happened. Every adult in the water is certified in CPR and first aid. We have strict safety rules. Nobody swims without a life jacket. Everyone has to have a buddy. We have emergency protocols. I brought in 3 other volunteers, all of them trained instructors who used to work at the community center. She pulled out more papers, equipment logs, cleaning schedules, even receipts showing she'd been buying all the supplies herself. The life jackets, the first aid materials, everything. I used your water and your electricity, Maria said, and I'm sorry for that. I'll pay you back. I've been keeping track of the hours and I can calculate what I owe you. It might take me a while, but I'll pay every penny. Robert looked at the papers spread across his desk. This wasn't some careless party. This wasn't Maria taking advantage. This was organized, professional, done with more care and planning than some of his own business operations. How many families? He asked. 23, Maria said. We rotate them because we can only safely handle about 20 people at a time. Some of them drive over an hour to get here. There's a waiting list of 40 more families who want to join, but I had to turn them away because I didn't want to risk having too many people. I didn't want to draw attention. I didn't want you to find out. She stood up then, reaching into her other pocket. She pulled out a key ring, the one Robert had given her 8 years ago. His house keys, his gate codes, everything. She placed them carefully on the desk. I know you're going to fire me, Maria said, and now the tears did start falling. I know what I did was unforgivable. I used your property without permission. I lied to you for months. I broke your trust, but please let us finish today's session. Those kids have been waiting all week for this. 2 hours. Just give me 2 more hours to end this properly. To say goodbye to these families, and then I'll pack my things and go. You'll never hear from me again. Robert looked at the keys on his desk, then at the papers, then at Maria standing there soaking wet, crying, terrified but still asking for those kids to have their 2 hours. Sit down, he said. Mr. Chen, sit down. His voice wasn't angry, just firm. Maria sat. Robert leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. His mind was racing. 8 years of perfect service. 8 years of trust. And yes, she'd broken that trust. She'd used his property without permission. She'd lied to him by omission, if nothing else. But she'd done it for kids who had nowhere else to go. She'd done it carefully, responsibly, safely. She'd spent her own money, her own time, taken on legal liability. All to give families who couldn't afford therapy a chance at something better. You're not fired, Robert finally said. Maria's head snapped up. What? You're not fired, he repeated. But we need to have a very long conversation about how this moves forward. Because this, he gestured at the papers, this can't continue the way it has been. Maria stared at Robert like she hadn't heard him correctly. I don't understand, she whispered. Robert picked up one of the papers from his desk, the one with all the participant information. He scanned through it, seeing names, ages, conditions. 7-year-old with muscular dystrophy. 12-year-old burn victim with limited mobility. A teenager with autism who was nonverbal but thrived in water. Family after family, each with a story, each with a need. Tell me about the costs, Robert said. Everything. What have you been paying for out of pocket? Maria seemed frozen, like she was afraid this was some kind of trap. Mr. Chen, Maria. He looked at her directly. I'm not playing games. I want to know the actual costs. All of them, she swallowed hard. The insurance policy is $300 a month. The life jackets cost about $800 total when I bought them. First aid supplies run about $50 a month. Pool chemicals and extra cleaning supplies maybe another $75 a month. I hired a lifeguard for the first month until I got my own certification. That was $200 a week. The volunteers don't get paid, but I buy lunch for everyone afterward because they're giving up their time. That's about $150 each week. Robert did the math in his head. Maria had been spending close to $1,000 a month on this. Maybe more. And she made good money working for him, but not that kind of money. Not the kind where you could just throw away $1,000 every month and not feel it. How are you managing that? He asked. Maria looked embarrassed. I picked up weekend work at a hotel. Cleaning rooms. My daughter helps sometimes. And Carlos, even though he's in the wheelchair, he does online customer service from home now. We pool everything together. Robert felt something twist in his chest. She'd been working 7 days a week. Her daughter was working instead of being a normal teenager. Also, some kids could swim in his pool that he never used anyway. Tell me about the volunteers, he said. The ones in the water with the kids. Who are they? Katie used to run the adaptive swim program at the community center, Maria explained. She's been doing this for 12 years. She has every certification you can imagine. When the program shut down, she was heartbroken. She's a physical therapist during the day, so she volunteers here on her afternoon off. The tall guy, that's David. He was a swim coach for 20 years before he retired. His grandson has Down syndrome, so this is personal for him. And the woman with the red hair, that's Patricia. She lost her leg in a car accident 5 years ago. She knows what these kids are going through. They all know this is my property? Robert asked. Maria nodded. I told them the truth. That I work for you, that you weren't home, and that I was using the pool without permission. Katie almost didn't come because she was worried about the legal issues. But when I showed her the insurance policy and the safety protocols, she said she'd risk it because these families needed help. Robert stood up and walked to the window. From here, he could see a corner of the pool area. He watched one of the volunteers, David apparently, working patiently with a young boy who was clearly scared of the water. The man's hands were steady, his voice calm, his whole body language radiating patience and kindness. What happens if you stop? Robert asked, still looking out the window. If I say no more, what happens to those families? They have nowhere to go, Maria said quietly. Most of them can't afford private therapy. The waiting lists at subsidized facilities are years long. Some of those kids will just stop getting better, maybe stop trying. One of the mothers told me her son had started talking about giving up on everything because he felt like such a burden. But after swimming here for a month, he told her he wanted to try out for the Paralympics someday. Robert turned back to face her. You understand why I should be angry, right? You used my property without permission. For months. You brought strangers onto my land. Anything could have gone wrong. Someone could have gotten hurt. I could have been sued. My insurance might not have covered it because I didn't authorize any of this. I know, Maria said, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. I know all of that. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you'd do it again, wouldn't you? Robert asked. If I turned back time, if you had to make the choice again, you'd still do it. Maria hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I would. Because those kids deserve a chance. They deserve to feel normal, even if it's just for 2 hours a week. They deserve to have hope. Robert sat back down at his desk. He picked up the schedule again, really looking at it this time. It wasn't just names and times. There were notes. Timothy likes to arrive 15 minutes early to watch the others. Don't rush him. Rebecca needs extra encouragement but will thrive once she feels safe. Antonio's mother works until 3:30, so David picks him up and brings him. Make sure he gets a snack before swimming. These weren't just participants to Maria, they were people she knew, people she cared about. I've spent my whole life building a business, Robert said slowly, making money, buying things. I bought this house 5 years ago because I thought it would make me happy. Do you know how many times I've actually used that pool? Maria shook her head. 3 times, Robert said. 3 times in 5 years. I did exactly 6 laps the day after I moved in, just to say I'd used it. Then once when a business partner came over and wanted to take a swim, and once last summer when it was so hot I couldn't think straight. 3 times. That's it. He stood up again, started pacing. I have 8 bedrooms in this house. I sleep in one of them maybe 50 nights a year. I have a home theater that I've never turned on. A gym with equipment still in the original packaging. A library full of books I bought but never read. I have all this space, all these things, and for what? So I can tell people I have them? Maria watched him, not sure where he was going with this. My parents were immigrants, Robert continued. They came here with nothing. My father worked in a restaurant kitchen for 30 years. My mother cleaned houses. He stopped, looking at Maria. Houses like this one. She cleaned houses exactly like this one for people who barely noticed she existed. Mr. Chen, do you know what my mother told me before she died? Robert asked. She said she was proud of my success, but she hoped I'd remember that money is only useful if you do something meaningful with it. She said having everything means nothing if you give nothing. He picked up the keys Maria had placed on his desk and held them out to her. Take these. Mr. Chen, I can't take them, he insisted. You're not fired, Maria, but things are going to change. Because you're right. Those kids deserve a chance, and this pool sitting empty while families struggle to find help is ridiculous. Maria took the keys with shaking hands, still not quite believing what was happening. Here's what we're going to do, Robert said, his business mind kicking into gear now. First, we're going to make this legal. Proper legal. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow and we'll set up a nonprofit foundation. Everything by the book. Real liability coverage, proper permits, the works. A foundation? Maria repeated. Second, we're going to expand the program. I'll fund renovations to make the pool area properly accessible. Ramps, lifts, changing facilities, whatever is needed. We'll hire your volunteers as paid staff if they want it. Nobody should have to work for free to help kids. Maria's mouth was open, but no words were coming out. Third, Robert continued, you're going to run it, full time. I'll hire someone else to manage the house. This will be your job now if you want it. Director of the, whatever we call it, the foundation. You'll get a real salary, benefits, budget to work with. You can expand to more families, more days, whatever makes sense. I don't understand, Maria said. Why would you do this? Robert thought about that for a moment. Because you showed me what I should have seen myself. I have all this and I've been using it for nothing. You took a risk because you saw people who needed help and you couldn't just walk away. Maybe it's time I did the same. But this will cost you so much money, Maria protested. I have so much money, Robert said simply. More than I could spend in 3 lifetimes.
What's the point of it if it just sits there?
What's the point of this whole place if it's empty? He gestured around them. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing, Maria. You gave me a purpose for all this. So no, you're not fired. You're promoted. Maria started crying again, but this time it wasn't from fear. I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it, Robert said. Say you'll help me turn this into something real. Something that actually matters. Maria looked at the keys in her hand, then back at Robert. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll do it. Good, Robert said. Now go finish today's session. Those kids are probably wondering where you are. We'll talk details tomorrow. We have a lot of planning to do. Maria walked back to the pool in a daze. Her mind was spinning so fast she could barely put one foot in front of the other. 5 minutes ago, she'd been sure her life was over. Sure she'd lost her job, her income, everything she'd worked for. Now Robert was talking about foundations and salaries and making this whole thing official. It felt like a dream. The kind of dream where you wake up and reality comes crashing back. But when she reached the pool, the kids were still there. Still real. Still splashing and laughing and learning. Katie looked up from where she was helping a girl practice floating on her back. Everything okay? Katie mouthed silently. Maria nodded, not trusting herself to speak yet. She dropped the towel on a chair and slipped back into the water. The little girl she'd been working with earlier, the nervous one, was waiting for her by the shallow end steps. Miss Maria, you came back, the girl said, relief clear in her voice. Of course I came back, sweetie, Maria said, finding her voice again. I promised I would, didn't I? Now let's see if we can get you to float for 10 seconds today. For the next hour, Maria went through the motions of the session on autopilot. Her body knew what to do, even while her mind was still processing what had just happened. She helped kids practice their strokes, encouraged the scared ones, celebrated the small victories. A boy who'd been afraid to put his face in the water finally did it. A teenager with cerebral palsy managed 3 independent strokes for the first time ever. Normal Thursday things. Except nothing about this Thursday was normal anymore. She kept glancing toward the house, half expecting Robert to come storming out and tell her he'd changed his mind. That it had all been some kind of test and she'd failed. But he didn't appear. The house just sat there, quiet and massive, while the pool area buzzed with activity. When 4 o'clock came and the session ended, Maria helped the kids out of the water and into their wheelchairs and braces. Parents started arriving, pulling up in their worn-out cars, their faces showing the tiredness that came from working multiple jobs and still struggling to make ends meet. They thanked Maria like they always did, like she was giving them something priceless, which she supposed she was. Patricia, the volunteer with the prosthetic leg, came over as the last family was leaving. That man who showed up earlier, she said quietly. That was him, wasn't it? The owner, Maria nodded. We're done then? Patricia asked. This was the last session? Actually, Maria said, and she still couldn't quite believe the words coming out of her mouth. He wants to expand the program. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. He wants to what? Expand it. Make it official. He's going to fund it. Turn it into a real nonprofit. Maria felt tears threatening again. He wants to hire you. Pay you for your time. All of you. Katie had walked over during this conversation. Are you serious right now? I think so, Maria said. I mean, we have to work out details tomorrow, but yes, he's serious. David, the retired swim coach, joined them. The rich guy who owns this place wants to give us money to keep doing what we're already doing for free? That's what he said, Maria confirmed. The 4 of them stood there in silence for a moment, water dripping from their swimsuits, surrounded by wet towels and pool equipment. I'll believe it when I see it, David finally said, but he was smiling. Rich people say a lot of things. But hey, if he's genuine, that would be something. That would really be something. After everyone left, Maria spent an extra hour cleaning up, making sure everything was perfect. She'd always been meticulous about leaving no trace, but tonight felt different. If this was really going to become something official, something permanent, she wanted Robert to see how seriously she took it. When she finally finished, the sun was starting to set. She walked back toward the main house to lock up the pool equipment shed, and found Robert standing on the back patio, watching the empty pool. "Good session?" he asked. "Yes," Maria said. "Everyone asks me to say thank you. The families. They wanted you to know how grateful they are. They don't know yet, do they? About the changes?" Maria shook her head. "I wasn't sure if I should tell them." "Wasn't sure if you meant it." Robert looked at her, and there was something different in his expression. Something softer than the driven businessman she'd known for 8 years. "I meant it, Maria. I've already sent emails to my lawyer and my accountant. We're meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'd like you there." That night, Maria barely slept. She kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if Robert's lawyer talked him out of it? What if it turned out to be too complicated or too expensive? What if she'd somehow misunderstood the whole conversation? But the next morning at 9 a.m. sharp, she was sitting in Robert's office again. This time there were 2 other people there. A woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Jennifer, Robert's attorney, and an older man named Howard. His accountant, Maria, Jennifer said, pulling out a legal pad. "Robert has briefed us on the situation. Before we move forward, I need to understand exactly what's been happening here. For liability purposes, you understand." For the next hour, Maria explained everything again. The volunteer program, the safety protocols, the families they were serving. Jennifer took notes, asked sharp questions, and occasionally exchanged glances with Howard that Maria couldn't quite read. Finally, Jennifer sat back. "Okay, here's the situation. What you've been doing, while well-intentioned, was legally precarious. If anything had gone wrong, Robert could have been sued, and his homeowner's insurance would likely have denied the claim, since he didn't authorize the activity." Maria's heart sank. Here it came. The lawyer was going to shut it all down. "However," Jennifer continued, "if we structure this correctly, we can make it completely legitimate. We'll establish a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The foundation will lease the pool facility from Robert for $1 per year. We'll get proper commercial liability insurance, obtain all necessary permits, and ensure everything meets state regulations for adaptive recreation programs." "How long will that take?" Robert asked. "If we move fast, 6 weeks for the basic nonprofit status. Full 501c3 tax-exempt status from the IRS could take 3 to 6 months." Jennifer looked at Maria. "You'll need to form a board of directors. Typically 5 to 7 people. You'll need bylaws, financial procedures, the works." Maria's head was spinning. "I don't know how to do any of that." "You don't have to," Jennifer said. "That's what I'm here for. I'll handle the legal structure. You focus on the program itself. But I'll need some information from you. How many families do you currently serve? How many do you want to serve? What are your operating costs? What's your growth plan?" "I have files," Maria said. "Everything documented. Good, get them to me by Monday." Howard, the accountant, spoke up for the first time. "Robert's proposing an initial funding of $3 million for the first 3 years. That should cover facility improvements, staff salaries, operating expenses, equipment, and leave a healthy reserve for unexpected costs. $3 million. Maria couldn't even conceptualize that much money. "For the facility improvements," Howard continued, "we're looking at installing proper accessibility ramps, a pool lift system, renovated changing rooms with accessible features, a small therapy room, and office space for administrative work. The contractor estimates 8 to 12 weeks for completion. During construction, the program will need to pause." Jennifer added, "Can your families wait 3 months?" Maria thought about the kids, about Carlos, about all the progress they'd made. 3 months felt like forever. But for a real facility, a permanent solution. "Yes," she said. "They can wait." Robert had been quiet through most of this, just listening. Now he leaned forward. "Maria, I want to be clear about something. This foundation will be independent. You'll run it, not me. I'm funding it and providing the facility. But the program decisions, the hiring, the day-to-day operations, that's all you. I'll be on the board, sure, but this is your thing." "I still can't believe this is happening," Maria said quietly. "Believe it," Robert said. "Now Jennifer mentioned you'll need a board of directors. Do you have people in mind? Maria thought for a moment. Katie, the physical therapist who volunteers. She knows this world inside and out. David, the retired coach, he's got decades of experience. And maybe Patricia. She's lived with disability herself, so she understands what these families face. Good start, Jennifer said, writing names down. We'll need at least 2 more. Ideally someone with nonprofit experience and someone with financial expertise. I know someone, Howard said unexpectedly. My daughter runs a nonprofit for children with special needs. Different focus, but she knows the ins and outs. I think she'd be interested. And I have a client who's a CFO at a medical equipment company, Jennifer added. He's always looking for meaningful volunteer work. I can ask, it was really happening. Maria sat there listening to these people, these lawyers and accountants and successful professionals, planning out a future for her Secret Thursday program. They were talking about budgets and bylaws and board meetings, turning her desperate solution into something real and lasting and legal. One more thing, Robert said as the meeting was winding down. The name. Every foundation needs a name. Maria, what do you want to call it? She hadn't thought about that. She'd been so focused on just surviving day to day, keeping the program running week to week, that she'd never imagined it would need an official name. Something simple, she finally said. Something that tells people exactly what we do. Maybe Second Chance Aquatics? Robert nodded slowly. I like it. Everyone in this program is getting a second chance. The kids, the families, even me. He looked around at the others. Second Chance Aquatics it is. 18 months later, Maria stood in the newly renovated facility office looking at the wall calendar. Every slot was filled. Monday through Saturday, morning and afternoon sessions. 167 families now participated in the program. The waiting list had grown to over 300. The transformation had been incredible. What started as Maria's desperate Thursday afternoon secret had become something far beyond anything she'd imagined. The pool area now had proper wheelchair ramps with gentle slopes. A state-of-the-art pool lift could transfer anyone safely into the water. The changing rooms had been completely rebuilt with accessible showers, private changing areas, and enough space for families who needed extra help. But the physical changes were just the beginning. Maria now led a team of 12 instructors, all paid professionals with specialized training in adaptive aquatics. Katie had left her physical therapy job to become the full-time assistant director. David came in 3 days a week, still refusing to accept full-time pay because, as he said, I'm retired, and this keeps me young. Patricia ran specialized sessions for amputees, drawing from her own experience to help others adapt. The foundation had partnered with 3 local hospitals and 2 rehabilitation centers. Doctors were now referring patients directly to Second Chance Aquatics. Insurance companies had started recognizing their therapy sessions, which meant families who could never afford treatment before could now get help. Maria's brother Carlos had become one of the program's biggest success stories. Not only had his strength and mobility improved dramatically, but he'd also completed his certification as an adaptive swim instructor. Now he worked at the foundation 3 days a week, mentoring other people with spinal injuries and showing them what was possible. The best part, though, was watching the kids. The 7-year-old boy who'd been afraid to put his face in the water was now swimming independently, racing his friends across the pool. The teenager with cerebral palsy had competed in a regional adaptive swimming competition and won 2 medals. The girl who'd been so nervous that first day Maria worked with her. She was now helping teach the beginner class, demonstrating techniques for the newer kids. Maria heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Robert walking into the office. He'd changed too over the past year and a half. He'd cut his business travel in half and spent at least 2 afternoons a week at the facility. He wasn't just a donor anymore. He was present. Big day, Robert said, smiling. You ready? Today was the official ribbon-cutting ceremony for the foundation's expansion. They'd just completed construction on a second building, a small gym with specialized equipment for land-based therapy, plus 3 office rooms for private consultations. The local news was coming. The mayor was speaking. It was going to be a whole thing. As ready as I'll ever be, Maria said. She still wasn't comfortable with the attention. She preferred being in the water with the kids, not standing in front of cameras and making speeches. You're going to be great, Robert assured her. Just tell them what you always tell me. Why this matters. Why these families need this. By 2 o'clock, over 200 people had gathered on the facility grounds. Families from the program, community members, local officials, donors who'd contributed after hearing about Second Chance Aquatics. Maria saw faces she recognized everywhere. Parents who'd thanked her with tears in their eyes. Kids who'd learned to swim despite everyone saying they couldn't. The mayor gave a speech about community values and supporting families. Jennifer, Robert's lawyer who'd become the foundation's legal counsel, talked about the importance of accessible health care. Then it was Maria's turn. She walked up to the microphone, her heart pounding. Public speaking had never been her thing. But when she looked out at the crowd and saw all those families, all those kids who'd been given a chance, the words came easier. 2 years ago, Maria began, I was just a housekeeper trying to help my brother. He'd been injured and he needed therapy he couldn't afford. I found a community program that changed his life. And then that program shut down. I made a choice that day. It wasn't the right choice, legally speaking. It wasn't even a smart choice. But it was the only choice I could live with. She saw Robert in the front row nodding encouragement. I used my employer's pool without permission. I brought families onto his property without telling him. When he found out, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything. Maria paused, feeling her throat tighten. Instead, I found out what real generosity looks like. What it means when someone with resources decides to use them for something that matters. She gestured to Robert. This man could have fired me. He could have pressed charges. Instead, he asked me how we could make it better. How we could help more families. He took my secret Thursday afternoon sessions and turned them into this. A real facility. A real program. A real chance for families who thought they were out of options. The crowd applauded, but Maria wasn't finished. But this isn't just about one person's generosity. It's about a community. Katie, David, Patricia. These people volunteered their time when we had nothing. They believed in these kids before anyone else did. The families who trusted us when we were operating out of someone's backyard, hoping we wouldn't get caught. Every person here today is part of this story. She looked directly at the families now. To the parents who drive an hour each way to get here, who rearrange work schedules and sacrifice so much to give your kids this opportunity. You are heroes. To the kids who work so hard every session, who push through fear and pain and frustration to learn something new, you inspire us every single day. This facility exists because you deserve it. Because every child deserves a chance to feel strong, capable, and normal. When Maria finished speaking, the applause was thunderous. She stepped back from the microphone, wiping her eyes, and Robert was there beside her. That was perfect, he said quietly. After the ceremony, after the ribbon was cut and the tours were given and the news cameras had packed up, Maria found herself sitting by the pool with Robert. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the water. It was quiet now, empty in a way it rarely was anymore. Do you remember that first day? Maria asked. When you came home early and found us? How could I forget? Robert said. I was so angry. I had this whole speech planned in my head about responsibility and boundaries. I was terrified, Maria admitted. I thought you were going to call the police. Robert was quiet for a moment. You want to know something? That day changed my life more than it changed yours. Maria looked at him in surprise. How do you figure that? I'd spent 15 years building a company, making money, buying things. I thought that was success. That was the goal. He gestured around them. I had all this space, all these resources, and I was using them for nothing. Just to say I had them. You showed me what I'd been missing, purpose, real purpose. You gave up a lot, Maria said. Time, money, privacy. You could have just written a check to some other charity and moved on. I could have, Robert agreed, but then I would have missed this. He pointed to a photo on the wall of the pool house, one that someone had taken during a session. It showed Robert in the water, supporting a little girl with spina bifida as she floated on her back for the first time. Both of them were grinning like they'd just won the lottery. I spent my whole life chasing something, Robert said. I thought it was success, wealth, achievement. Turns out what I was really looking for was this. Being part of something that actually helps people. Making a real difference, not just making more money. Maria smiled. My daughter asked me the other day if I ever regret not finishing college, not pursuing some big career. I told her I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. We both are, Robert said. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the water shimmer in the fading light. In a few hours, the pool would be filled with kids again. The morning session started at 8. 12 children with various disabilities, all learning that water could be freedom, that limitations didn't have to define them. Maria thought about that terrifying Thursday afternoon when Robert came home early. How her world had seemed to end in that moment. How she'd been so sure she'd lost everything. Instead, she'd found everything. Purpose, community, the chance to change lives every single day. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Maria said. "All those families still out there who need help but don't know we exist yet. The 300 people on our waiting list, the thousands more in other cities who have nowhere to go." Robert smiled. "Funny you should mention that. I've been talking to some people about expanding. Maybe starting second chance facilities in other locations. We've got the model now. We know it works, and seriously?" Maria turned to look at him. "Seriously, Jennifer's already researching the legal framework for expansion. Howard's running the numbers. I'm thinking we could open 3 new locations in the next 5 years. Maybe more if we can get additional donors involved." Maria felt tears welling up again. She seemed to cry a lot these days, but they were good tears. Happy tears. "This is really happening, isn't it?" "This is real. It's real," Robert confirmed. "And it started because you cared enough to take a risk. Because you couldn't walk away from people who needed help." As they sat there by the pool, Maria thought about all the lives that had changed. Not just the kids and families in the program, but her own life, Robert's life. The volunteers who'd found new purpose. The community that had rallied around something meaningful. All because she'd made one desperate choice on one Thursday afternoon. All because Robert had come home early and chosen compassion over anger. Sometimes the most important moments in life don't announce themselves. They look like disasters. They feel like the end of everything. But if you're lucky, if you're brave, if you're willing to see possibility where others see only problems, those moments become the beginning of something beautiful. Maria stood up, ready to go home to her family to rest before another busy day tomorrow. But she paused, looking back at the facility one more time. "Thank you," she said to Robert, "for seeing what this could be. For believing in it. For believing in me." "Thank you," Robert replied, "for showing me what really matters." The lights around the pool flickered on automatically as darkness fell, reflecting off the water like stars. And tomorrow those stars would see more miracles. More kids learning they were capable of amazing things. More families finding hope. More lives changed, one swimming lesson at a time. 5 years after that life-changing Thursday afternoon, Maria found herself standing in front of a packed auditorium at the State Convention Center. She still couldn't believe she was here, about to address 300 people at the National Conference on Adaptive Recreation. Her hands were shaking slightly as she adjusted the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces. Therapists, program directors, families, advocates, and other people who believed that everyone deserved access to healing. Through movement and water, the woman who'd introduced her had listed Maria's accomplishments like she was reading from some impressive resume. Director of Second Chance Aquatics, founder of the Adaptive Recreation Network, recipient of the Governor's Award for Community Service. But Maria still felt like the same housekeeper who'd been terrified of losing her job just a few years ago. "I want to start with a story," Maria began, her voice steadying as she found her rhythm. "About a decision that should have ended my career but instead changed hundreds of lives, including my own." She told them about Carlos, about the community center that closed, about her desperate choice to use Robert's pool without permission. She watched their faces as she described that terrifying moment when Robert came home early and found 20 kids swimming in his backyard. "The beautiful thing about that day," Maria continued, "wasn't just that my boss chose compassion over anger. It was what happened next. Because when word got out about what we were doing, something magical started happening. Other people with resources began stepping forward. Other families with similar struggles found their voices." She clicked to the next slide, showing a map dotted with locations across 3 states. "Today, Second Chance Aquatics operates 12 facilities. We serve over 800 families every month. But more importantly, we've proven that this model works, that communities will rally around programs that truly serve their most vulnerable members." The audience applauded, but Maria had learned to pause and let them settle before continuing with the part that mattered most. "Here's what I've learned in 5 years of running this organization. The magic isn't in the pools or the equipment or even the therapy itself. The magic is in what happens when people stop seeing disabilities and start seeing possibilities. When communities decide that every child deserves to feel strong and capable, regardless of their challenges. She shared some of their success stories. The boy who'd been afraid to put his face in the water was now 17 and had just been accepted to college on a partial swimming scholarship. The teenager with cerebral palsy had competed in 3 Paralympic qualifying events. But Maria always came back to the families, the parents who'd found hope again, the siblings who'd learned that different didn't mean less than. The hardest part of my job isn't managing the programs or handling the budgets, Maria said. It's turning families away. Every week I get calls from parents who've driven hours to reach us, only to find out our waiting list is 6 months long. I get emails from other states, begging us to expand to their communities because their children have nowhere else to turn. This was the message she'd come here to deliver. Not just the success story, but the challenge. That's why I'm here today. Not to celebrate what we've accomplished, but to ask you to imagine what's possible if we stop thinking small. What if every community had access to adaptive recreation? What if insurance companies were required to cover aquatic therapy? What if we treated adaptive programs not as charity, but as essential health care? After her presentation, Maria was surrounded by people wanting to know more. A woman from Oregon was trying to start a similar program, but couldn't find funding. A physical therapist from Texas had identified a location, but needed help with the legal framework. A father from Maine whose daughter had Down syndrome wanted to know how to advocate for services in his rural community. These conversations always energized Maria, but they also broke her heart a little. So many families struggling. So many kids who could benefit from what they offered, but lived too far away or couldn't afford the travel. Later that evening, Maria called Robert from her hotel room. He was in Seattle for a tech conference, but he always made time when she called from these events. How did it go? He asked. Good response, Maria said. Lots of questions about replicating the model. The usual requests for help starting new programs. And how are you feeling about the expansion proposal? This was the big question they'd been wrestling with for months. The foundation had received a massive grant offer from a national healthcare foundation. $2 million over 3 years, specifically earmarked for expanding Second Chance Aquatics to 10 new states. It was more money than Maria had ever imagined working with, and the potential impact was enormous. But it also meant Maria would need to travel constantly, spending months away from home setting up new facilities and training new staff. Her own kids were teenagers now, and she'd already missed too many school events and family dinners for work. The success of the foundation had come with its own set of sacrifices. I keep thinking about something my daughter said last week, Maria told Robert. She said she was proud of me for helping so many families, but she missed having a mom who was around for the small stuff. The homework struggles, the friend drama, just regular Tuesday afternoons. Robert was quiet for a moment. He'd faced similar decisions as his business had grown, choosing between expansion opportunities and personal time. What does your gut tell you? My gut says we take the grant, but we do it differently. Instead of me flying around the country setting up programs, we bring people here. We create a training center, teach other people to replicate what we've built, then send them home to start their own foundations. A franchise model for nonprofits, Robert said, and Maria could hear the smile in his voice. I like it. What would you need? A bigger facility, housing for trainees, a formal curriculum, maybe partner with a university for accreditation. Maria was thinking out loud now, the way she did when ideas were just forming. We could bring in 12 people at a time for intensive 2-week programs, teach them everything from legal structure to pool safety to working with families, then provide ongoing support as they launch in their home communities. How many programs could you spawn that way? Maria did quick math in her head. If we trained 12 people every month and even half of them successfully launched programs, we could have 60 new facilities operating within 3 years. That's potentially thousands of families served. The next morning, Maria found herself sitting in the hotel restaurant with 3 other women who'd attended her presentation. They'd asked to meet for breakfast, and Maria had assumed they wanted advice about starting programs in their own communities. Instead, they had a different kind of proposal. We've been talking, said Jennifer, a recreation therapist from Colorado. About what you said yesterday about insurance coverage and making adaptive programs standard healthcare. The three of us work for different hospital systems, added Linda, who ran an adaptive sports program in Ohio. But we keep seeing the same thing. Kids who need aquatic therapy but can't access it. Families going into debt trying to pay for private sessions. The third woman, Patricia, pulled out a folder thick with papers. We want to do something about it. We want to lobby for legislation requiring insurance coverage for adaptive recreation programs. We think if we coordinate efforts across multiple states, we might actually have a chance. Maria felt her heart rate pick up. This was bigger than expanding Second Chance Aquatics. This was about changing systems, about making sure every family could access help regardless of their financial situation.